Hey everybody, it's Alexa from BERKS Nostalgia, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Josiah Dives, who's one of the founders of Pomeroy's department store. Buckle up, because this story gets a little spooky. Josiah Dives was born in 1851 in England. He started his business career after moving to London as a young adult. When coming to America in 1872, his first residence was Hartford, Connecticut. This is where he met George Pomeroy and John Stewart. Together, they came to Reading and started Dives, Pomeroy, and Stewart Department Store, which most today just know as Pomeroy's. Josiah's main home was on Hill Road in Reading, where many of the wealthy business owners of that time lived. He also had a summer estate, which he purchased the first parcel of in 1883. Josiah affectionately deemed his property Folly Farm. He built a mansion for himself and his family to live at during the summer months at the foot of what would become known as Dives Hill. He continued buying adjacent pieces of land to expand his estate for the remainder of the 1800s and well into the 1900s. By the time of his death, he had acquired well over 150 acres of land. The estate was massive by 1922 and had various homes and buildings. In addition to the main mansion, there was a large clubhouse at the foot of Dives Hill. There he would host extravagant parties for the employees of Dives, Pomeroy's, and Stewart. The mansion and grounds would come to be home to numerous deaths over the course of the early 20th century. Tragedy first struck in 1914 when Josiah's wife, Mary, died of anemia in the summer home mansion on Folly Farm at 64 years old. Josiah himself died in the house a few years later in 1922 at age 71. His obituary stated he had been ill for quite a few years and bedridden in the old mansion. Keep in mind that dying at home wasn't really out of the ordinary back then. This was one of the wealthiest families in the county, and doctors at the time mostly visited their patients. It's even less surprising that they let Mary and Josiah pass in the summer home over the main house in Reading. Fresh air was considered to have healing qualities back then over the polluted city air and was definitely a more peaceful place to spend one's last days. Josiah and Mary had a daughter and two sons, Edward and Arthur. In Josiah's obituary, it stated that both men were very interested in pursuing the department store business that was partly owned by their father. However, just a few months after Josiah's death, Edward cut ties completely with the now Pomeroy's department store business. It is unknown if things went sour between Edward and his father's business partner, Pomeroy, or he just wanted to forge his own path. Edward bought out Pomeroy and his brother's share of a tool and hardware manufacturing business located in the Millmont section of Reading during this departure. This would be the company he owned and ran until his untimely death. 10 years later, on August 31st, 1933, Edward's lifeless body would be found by a caretaker on the lawn of the summer house. He had shot himself once in the head. His obituary stated that he had found out a few weeks prior to that he was ill, and that was the suspected reason he took his own life. Edward's wife, Mary, immediately shuttered this summer home mansion on Folly Farm, a place that had been the center of summer living for an entire family for 40 years. The trees and the weeds around the mansion encroached it, and the main summer home fell into disrepair. It was razed at some point in the late 1950s. People that grew up in this area at that time recall playing and exploring in that abandoned mansion. The property had plenty of local lore surrounding it, but no stories that I've heard seem to include the tragic suicide of Edward on the grounds. Ancestors of Edward still live on that land that was once part of the complete Folly Farm. Others have since sold or subdivided the lots, but this piece of land has not changed hands and is still owned by the estate of Edward J. Dives. There are still maintained buildings at the foot of Dives Hill, including the old clubhouse, below where the old mansion once stood, that are a part of what's left of the original section of Folly Farm. It was urban legend amongst local kids that if you were walking down Dives Hill, you could sometimes hear screaming, which they thought were the shrieks of the nuns in the convent across the street from the old Folly Farm estate. But what if it was actually the disembodied screams of those that found Edward on that late summer evening in 1933?